speaking off the cuff, a little too much whiskey, not enough whiskey. I don't know, but
Ooh, that's a segue.
Is that a segue?
You guys into whiskey?
Oh, love it.
Oh, that was a silly part.
That's a nice way to do it too if you don't have the chips.
There's been a couple episodes where we got it to the end of it and we're like, I think we overdid it.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, Devon. It's possible. I've seen weirder stuff.
Yeah.
You know what
That is
when you got it.
when you gotta dumb me down a little bit here. All right, fine. Okay,
Just a sip, eh? Splash.
just a splash.
But I agree, ancient, like, there's a lot to it. Like, if you think about just the crap that happened back then.
Cheers.
I love it.
Yeah. That's why I'm not ripping on
You
them.
gotta take the opportunities you
Basically,
get.
can we come back to that?
We can totally.
That's
Sure.
a good question. And I want to respond to it. It's so bad. Michael Baldwin, also known as
Biker Mike.
Biker Mike, and Kickstand for Devon Braun.
Yeah.
And the two of you are...
Blue Collar Philosophers Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook, and on anywhere that you get your podcast. We are there. When the microphone gets turned on, and I'm sure you've had it where a microphone goes on and they just go silent.
They
Like
freeze.
this is very
Yeah.
personal.
It's happened a couple times.
Yeah.
We've had somebody, we're talking
I've had
before,
that.
and it's like, it's really flowing. You're like, oh man, this is going to be a great night. And then they hop on, and it's like, it just gets so stilted. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is not,
Well, it
this
takes
is not going at all
takes
where
a
we thought it
while
would.
to break it down. Like, you got to engage and then make them start to feel comfortable. And the longer ones are done for a reason, because it takes me about an hour to try and get everybody comfortable, and then you kind of get into that little bit of a groove, and,
Yeah.
and
The
things are
pocket.
going right. Yeah, the pocket.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're going, and then after a while, you're like, my God, like, we're hitting 3 hours, we're smashing. Like, this is getting a bit too long, right? But it takes a little while to kind of get it going. And even with me, I hate it, like the butterflies and that.
Yeah.
Are we going to start this? It's got to be like hooky, right? We got to try and capture people.
Yeah. I find myself very blessed because I got the gift of gab where it's not effort.
No.
It's just, you just go in, you start talking, you're just hanging out, and it's not even, there's not a lot of work that goes into it. You just start doing it.
Way to go.
And I'm not very conscious. I am conscious, but I'm not hyper conscious of the amount of people that are listening because I don't give a fuck. I'm like, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. If I wouldn't say it in private,
Yeah.
Not going to say it here.
Absolutely.
and so you just get really comfortable with saying some heinous shit.
I guess, you know what? We should just kind of introduce you.
Yes.
Bring you in, say, hey, thanks for coming to the studio.
Yeah.
Especially today, the weather today, for
Yeah, it's
anybody
something
who's
else,
just
isn't it?
watching, the first couple snowfalls of the year is always
Yeah.
the worst, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got highways closing all over the place.
Yeah. Well, and spinning. How is the South Taylor Hill?
It was fine. I mean, you were driving.
It was fine, but at the same time, you get behind somebody who's a little ridey on the brakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't
People
horrible.
horrible.
Weren't spun out. And it
No,
wasn't
no,
big-
no spun outs. They
Oh,
just everyone's coming up the hill at a safe pace. It wasn't too much, wasn't too little. So I was pretty happy with it.
They do stay on it for the most part. They'll have
Yeah.
a sand truck out there. But we've got, this is pretty cool actually, a couple of other two local podcasters.
Yes, sir.
And with a podcast called the Blue Collar Philosophers, which is a pretty cool name. I like it because it does capture a lot, doesn't it? It must have took you a while to come up with.
I don't know. That was all Mike here.
Was that me?
Yeah, that was you. That was
trying to
your
remember, I'm like,
brainchild.
was that
how
Devon,
hard?
or was
How
that me?
hard was it? Were you like smoking out the ears for that one? Or?
Maybe smoking something.
Probably, for a couple of days to come up with that.
No. We were shooting many things, many bar to bar, very motorcycle reference and all this stuff.
But
And
then we realized we didn't want the whole thing just to be about motorcycles.
yeah, we didn't
So-
want to pigeonhole ourselves.
Yeah, so we were trying to think about just what has something that has that je ne sais quoi that.
Wow, je ne sais quoi. That came off the tongue
he's French,
nicely.
so.
Eh? Beaudoin? Is that your last name?
No.
No. You need to make your
you
mouth.
can't do it.
You need to make your mouth make shapes that it's not supposed to in order to properly pronounce it.
Technically.
Do you have to kind of get that in there too? A little bit of.
I wish. Unfortunately, no. Bo, the way you make for the U, you make your tongue like a U and your mouth like an O, and you make the U sound that says Beaudoin, and you just kind of do it very quickly. Otherwise, it's a Germanic derivative of Baldwin. So, it's actually, I had to do some research because I'm like, what the fuck am I trying to tell people to say?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just need to know things and know what my name meant, and Baldwin. So. Yeah.
So Michael Baldwin, also known as
Biker Mike.
Biker Mike, and Kickstand for Devon Braun.
Yeah.
And the two of you are the Blue Collar Philosophers. So that's kind of, I think, what we're probably going to gravitate to.
Yeah.
Just to kind of kick going here, kick it off, I guess. Could I be kickoff?
You see, a kickstand you only need it when you're stationary.
Yeah.
So,
but you always need it because when you stop. If you don't use it, it goes bad. We got stories. That's all the thing. But
and your background is obviously a common interest is biking.
Yeah, actually, no. Our common bond formed over music.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys are musicians?
No. Not nearly so interesting or talented. So I was starting to work with a local radio station in Fort St. John, doing a Christian heavy metal hour on their programming. It's CIM. So that was, it was a bit of work to try and establish this thing going, but I wanted to break into that kind of media space where I could do ministry is what I wanted to do. And I was looking for a co-host to do it with. And my little sister was like, I know the guy from our Bible study at church. You're gonna love him, and I think he'll be a great fit. So then we connected. We had coffee. We're like, okay, there's something here. There's a chemistry that is gonna
You're
work.
able to kind of get into a conversation that's a little bit more than just surface coffee talk.
It was great. He had a great knowledge of the genre, and he was, like you said, has the gift of gab and a certain edge to him that I felt that I didn't have. That would be mandatory to have in a program like that for it not to be really boring. And then we got things going, and I went to go do some training for the media stuff, and he went to go meet the people at the station and kind of get on as not an employee, because they did something more akin to slave labor. I mean, missionary.
Oh yeah. It's a little bit of a volunteer slave labor.
Yeah, it was a volunteer thing, but only if they felt like you fit in, I guess, the overall family that they had there, and they hated him.
Oh, why is that? He's just too rough around the edges?
Yes, I really do think. And you can't just tell me to do something, and if I don't do it exactly the way you want, you just tell me to do it again, and I'm like, oh yeah, but this sounds better, because I'm all about sound. If it doesn't sound good, I don't want to push it forward. Not knowing that there's a legal specifications that they needed to follow in order to do this thing. And so they never tried explaining it to me. They're like, just do it this way. I'm like, yes, but it doesn't sound good. It sounds like shit. So I'm going to push towards something that's better.
Yeah. So
he
didn't play nice in the rules that they were required to abide by. And so, it didn't work out. And that whole project kind of fizzled out after kind of launching a kind of pilot 4 episodes for it that never got released. Like, I was really proud of them. They were great. But it just
to get to that point is a feat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is an accomplishment.
Yeah.
But isn't that the biggest thing right now, is that everybody tries to have, I think, a bit of a cookie cutter kind of approach, and you got to meet certain matrix, and you got to have a certain way of going about things that meet, the general population.
Well, one of the things that we did
enough of that.
While he was working at that, he's like, Mike, I got a question. Like, I'm doing this thing, and we started looking at what he was doing, and I'm like, hey man, what if we threw something behind here, like a little back sound, just not a lot, a little bit of Becoming the Archetype, I think it was, Saint Anne's Lullaby, if I remember, some kind of something he was building, and it was really beautiful. And I'm like, I hear what you're trying to do, but let's add to it. And so I think that was the point when we really kicked off to be like, okay, there's a part of me that
It was
can
great.
help.
Doing something with somebody else inherently brings a collaborative spirit that, you know, you're better, you're more than the sum of your parts.
Yeah.
And so we felt that right from the get-go. So even though that project didn't work, that was the start of a friendship that, you know, turned from trying to do a project just into, let's go camping for a couple of days at, you know, like Crying Girl, you know, and bring out the quads and you know, go to Christina Falls and just do stuff like that and just develop a friendship. And then that developed into a working relationship. We wound up working next to each other as coworkers for a long time in construction.
Years. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, so it's like more than just friends. We're brothers from other mothers.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that really did. It took off then. So this is a meeting that you guys had together, you know, quite a while ago then. And then the idea
that must be 15 years ago.
It was pre-kids.
No, it was before you.
Before I was even
before you started dating your wife.
Yeah, just before, and I think that was 2008.
Yeah.
So yeah, 15 years ago we started hanging out, and we loved the same kind of music. We loved, you know, just taking care of our families. We loved the Christian dynamic that we were in with the circle that we had, and then you got me into motorcycles. And then it did turn into,
He bought my first bike off me for $1.
Nice.
Sold it for $600.
It's a great deal.
I'm sure there's a little bit of sweat equity that went into it, though.
Oh, the thing barely ran.
Man.
I felt so bad for
it
whoever
was
bought it.
It was a giant piece of shit. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, that's the one you want to start with.
It is.
That
It's
is.
the one you want to start with.
Every bike I got on, I was like, I think I can handle this because I know how to ride like a pedal bike. And I've been on dirt bikes and everything else. And then I tried a couple that weren't mine.
Yeah.
And one in particular I laid on the side and I'm like, oh man, yeah,
It's
this is actually
scary
a
having
completely
those
different
situations.
Yeah. Well, luckily I wasn't going very fast, but you know, the moral of that story is it wasn't my bike and I really had no idea what the hell I was doing, but it seems easy.
Oh yeah, you think you know it because I've ridden dirt bike, different animal.
Yeah, no, it is.
And then getting used to that style bike, cruiser, street bike, whatever, and you get used to that, and then you hop on a dirt bike thinking, I got this. I've ridden enough cruise. No, that's a different animal the same way. I've got so messed up riding dirt bikes and stuff. I get more messed up riding dirt bikes than I do on cruisers. I know more people that get messed up on cruisers because, I don't know, they decide to hit a corner a little too fast, hit a frost heave, and then go end over end, or somebody cuts in front of them. That's a horrible one that I've seen multiple times. Yeah. And it included almost happened to myself, but I know people that have written off their motorcycle and gotten pretty messed up, and I'm pretty blessed in that way where that hasn't happened to me.
I got a buddy who was just down in Chetwynd and a pickup went right in front of him. And he ran right into the side, got T-boned. He was in the hospital for a while. He's
Lucky
still
guy.
laid up. And
Lucky guy.
yeah, he was. He shattered his pelvis.
Yep.
And then it was right outside of the grocery store out in Chetwynd.
Yeah.
And I guess it was loud enough to where some of the people that were inside the grocery store came out to see what was going on.
Yeah.
And this one lady in particular came out while he was trying to stand up. And she's like, no, lay down. And he's like, no, I'm fine. He was in shock, right? He's trying to get up.
Yeah.
And he said it felt like he had to take a leak. And so she just said, no, it's okay. I'll lay here with you. It turned out his pelvis and everything had just exploded, and it ruptured his would
it be bladder?
Bladder, yeah. And so that's what that feeling was, right? Obviously he had quite a bit going on there, and they had to do quite a bit of work to get him up and running again. But he was one of those guys where, you know, fairly level-headed. Yeah. Didn't do anything too crazy. I mean, he's in his
you could do nothing
50s.
wrong. That's the thing with motorcycles.
Well, you feel like you're in control.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You could do everything perfect, and somebody does something else. You don't have the protection of a cage or a motor vehicle.
Yeah,
there's no airbags.
It's nothing. A dangerous hobby, no matter how level-headed you are.
Yeah, especially up here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot. You got the narrow shoulders. You've got gravel.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know.
gravel all over the place. That's been my bane.
That's
You
the
know,
only thing I think
broke-
of when I look at my
uh,
windshield. I go, how do you guys do it? Because the front of my truck is just destroyed.
Full face helmets.
Yeah,
full face helmets.
We switched to full
spring.
face helmets. Is the
I
thing?
bet.
It's instead of like the beanie that make you look really cool, like the guys in Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah,
you know, but you're
exactly.
like, because like we ride with like a big packs of bikes, and my position was like a sergeant at arms, so I rode at the back and kind of kept like I was like a sheepdog sort of thing, and then I realized being like right behind like 10 bikes means you're getting all the dirt,
that
all
debris.
the grit, all the debris
Yeah.
is coming straight at you. So I switched to a full face helmet real quick after starting in that position. It was nuts.
Well, those little windshields, they do quite a bit too. Eh?
Oh,
They
yeah.
don't look like a whole lot, but they throw that air right
Well,
up
they
over top
throw the
of you.
air over. They don't throw the debris over.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
debris
it gives
takes
you
a bit
it
more.
gives you a really comfortable pocket of air to cruise in and feel nice and feel good. You don't have the pressure of wind, but man, a rock is just gonna still hit you straight in the beaner.
Yep. Yeah. We've both been stung and all that stuff. So, anyways, motorcycles is something we have a passion for, and
No,
we
for
got
sure.
along with. And then
Comes
Well,
with
it was
some
more
awareness.
than just a passion that turned into the next ministry project. We got
Yeah.
involved with a Christian motorcycle club and established a charter up north here, and that was like an all-encompassing.
Yeah.
That was an all-encompassing project for us to build and maintain for 8 years.
yeah, close to
wow.
8 years. Yeah, and so when we stepped away from that, it left a little bit of a void.
Just a smidgy, a smidgy bit.
But podcasting was something I was very interested in. It was something that I really enjoyed. I liked listening to it, and I heard the conversations that were happening, and I recognized that Devon and I were having these types of conversations all the time. Like everything you hear on the podcast that we do, nothing. I'm not saying it's
It's not a
rehearsed.
put on. This is the kind of stuff we do when we're like putting drywall on walls or like hammering nails next to each other. Like,
Yeah.
it's,
We were like, hey,
we
here's
just
a little.
decided to throw microphones in the mix.
Yeah, and
And I guess from what because the few that I've listened to, well, it's quite a few actually. I think the common thread is that you're trying to. It's interesting because you are trying to bridge a little bit of a gap there. There's a little bit of a two different worlds kind of mixing together, and it seems like you're trying to explain one world or the other. So there's a little bit better understanding across the two different, I guess, points of view that could possibly get hung up on just kind of surface opinions, right? I mean, saying Christian or maybe you have a faith of some kind is not something that people gravitate to when it comes to a conversation. And then also on the far end of if people have a little bit more of a, well, in this area particularly, like I know Mike is in the patch. I'm not too sure what Devon is up to, but I know you guys are probably
Construction,
Okay, so the same exact kind of lingo.
yeah.
They don't really mesh all that well.
No, not so much.
And you've mentioned it and made it a point that some friends listen to your podcast,
Yeah.
and then maybe others don't, and there's concern as to maybe some judgment, like language or whatever have you.
We get the odd comment and be like, I would
Is
love
that
to
what
listen
you're
to your
trying to address?
Yeah, some people are like, I'd love to listen to your podcast, but man, you just swear so much. And we're like, I can understand. Like, I think that there's a certain amount of self-awareness that Mike and I do have, that this is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Like, you may want to tune in and to listen to the talks about like, theology or philosophy or what kind of things are on our mind, but you don't get that.
Yeah.
And it's just not for you then. Like, we don't care if it's not for everybody, but
Yeah.
for the guys out there that want to engage in their life in a deeper, more meaningful way, but live and breathe that kind of blue collar lifestyle, that patch life, that, all that stuff. And like, that's how they talk. That's how they rib each other. That's how they just communicate, right? Like, to be able to hear those kind of things in an environment where you're like, oh, I feel at home.
Yeah.
It does change it. Like,
It's more comfortable listening. It feels more authentic.
yeah.
With
Like,
that being
when
said,
I went to Bible college, don't get hung up, guys. I flunked, so I'm not an educated man.
Just throwing that out there.
I got to keep my blue collar credentials.
yeah,
But when I went there was a real nervousness that I had going into that environment, because, you know, like I felt like I was going into a place that I was not worthy of, like as far as who I was and what my interests were and sort of thing, right? Like I felt like I was going to be like the black sheep. And maybe the fourth or fifth day, I walk into my dorm and I hear the Family Guy theme song playing in the distance. And the sense of relief that washed over me was palpable. And that was a moment I'll never forget, because that was the moment where this environment where I felt like I needed to like walk on eggshells became open, and I could just be myself and dive in and actually be a part of it.
I completely get what you're saying. And I think a lot of people do kind of find that more or less refreshing. Most people are gray sheep. I mean, I don't see people that are 100%, you know, on one side or the other. And you do have wild degrees, you know, on either end of it all. But as far as the majority, I think most people in polite society, air quote, I guess, are fairly gray. I mean, if you crack a joke that might be a little bit, you know, edgy or whatever, it seems to soften the tension in the room. You know, I've never seen anyone really go, oh man, I feel comfortable here with like a knock joke, right? It's usually a pretty good. you need
make
somebody, it a little bit
yeah.
kind of break the ice, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think most people can relate to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's why we always tap kind of into the offensive sometimes, like not to be offensive. We're not trying to be offensive for the sake of being offensive. It's like, no, it allows people to feel like maybe their worst joke isn't that bad.
Yep.
And so we get to say stuff that a lot of people don't get to say. Well, simultaneously, we got people in our lives who love us dearly, and they're like, I love what you're doing. I love that you're doing something, but I hate how you're doing it. And they don't like the swearing. They don't, and they want the best for us.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, this is not for you. This is like the podcasts you want to listen to. They're out there. You can find them very easily.
In fact, we made one for you too.
Yes, we've got a side project.
Yeah, you guys have two now, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got ours, and we've got another one called Amateur Christian, which is very, very much meant to be something that's just flat out in the vein of ministry or theology or something like that, without the rest of the kind of after dark kind of vibe that we bring to this, as well as just other stuff. Like we talk motorcycles, we talk politics, like lots of different things. You know, we'll sit and we'll like debate for 2 hours on if free will is a thing, you know, like, apart from any, you know, connection to theology. And so we did one that we wanted to do, like, okay, if somebody's kind of got past that part of being comfortable with us, but actually wants to learn a little bit more about the details of the Christian faith in a way that's like, oh man, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. That's something that I can appreciate or learn to like or love, or I understand it in a way that we don't do on the Blue Collar Philosophers podcast. We've got one for that too. And that one, we do mind our P's and Q's so that it's for everybody.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway with that then? Like, do you guys have just like an overall, I guess, objective or message you want to send, or is it more or less just trying to
with the Amateur Christian one?
I mean,
yeah, I guess it would be two-sided question. I guess maybe
it's two-sided because they can each stand on their own. They don't. Yeah. They're not even really meant to be complementary. So they can each be on their own. You can be a fan of one and not listen to the other, and you're not missing anything. Yeah. But the Amateur Christian one there, the overall mission of that one is to present the treasure, present the good stuff of the Christian faith, and it basically just that. It's just take 2,000 years of cool things, cool practices, beliefs, little sidetracks that maybe are less known. People don't know, they've forgotten about in history. They don't have the time to study or don't have the time to look at all these little different things that I'm super interested in. Yeah. And bring them forward. Be like, hey, here's a cool thing. Like, Do you want to know where Halloween came from? Like, we'll go into that.
Yeah,
And, you know, so
actually, I heard that one. That was pretty interesting. That was you, wasn't it,
Oh,
Mike?
no, that was one that we did. We did do one on the Blue Collar Philosophers about Halloween, but mostly why are you scared? What is the scare nature that we got? It was just me and my buddy shooting the shit. But on the amateur Christian one, we actually tackled the history and a lot of the things that were happening that made Halloween what it is through I believe, the Catholic faith and where that came from. So yeah, it was.
Yeah. So it's basically to do that, not to do apologetics, not to do like arguing for us, not to like debate or things like that, because I kind of don't care. So it's just be like, you know, here's a neat thing that we get to do or can access to help grow faith or help, you know, learn new things.
Just to have a better understanding.
Yeah, just have a better understanding without being the guys that are always like trying to be negative about something.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, like, let's be honest, like we bring a lot of our, like, you know, both barrels snideness to the Blue Collar Philosophers Podcast.
Yep.
And that's where if we are going to talk about something to do with faith, we might get into kind of like the gloves off, like, okay, let's duke something out or have an argument. Or let's talk about where we mess up. Like, it's kind of an attitude of almost policing our own sort of thing.
I like what you're doing with it, though. Like, look, the one thing that I've taken away from it that I think most people that are listening gravitate to, and I know this has been mentioned, you know, before on your podcast, is that it isn't really necessarily about any one individual's backstory. It's more or less about having general conversation that even the listener feels like they can get engaged in. Mm-hmm. So whether they agree with it or not, at least you're navigating through the nuance of it. And that, to be quite honest, is it's not even a need anymore. People have a pretty big thirst and need for that long form conversation. I think the dopamine hit that we all talk about with social media and all that kind of stuff is definitely satisfying because it's an immediate, you know, a gratification, and your attention span gets fairly short. But at the end of the day,
but, I mean,
cabin fever is a real deal. Personal connection, real good engaged conversation. That's a rarity, and I think that's what you guys provide, and it's important.
Isn't it weird though how, like, in this moment that we're in right now, there's like this diverging attention spans? Because I mean, let's be honest, the biggest podcast in the world is like nonstop 2 hours, 3 hours long sort of thing, right?
At
like,
least,
people love it. And then on the other hand, there's like TikToks, the short, like 20, 30 second maximum, like boom, go through a doom scroll. And like both of those things are wildly successful. But the half hour long, you know, TV show, the this hour has 22 minutes, or even just like real news, all those things, like the traditional methods of having discussions is just going away entirely.
Yeah, they are. And they're scripted. And I think a lot of people are wanting more and more of the conversations that aren't so scripted, because you're getting into the weeds a little bit and you're touching on things that you're always thinking, but nobody is ever talking about.
I was thinking of another one where there was this recent thing that happened down in the States where this guy gets interviewed about what he released, and I don't want to give him more attention than it has to be, because that's a whole nother conversation. But
this is not big enough to set anyone on fire. You can throw his name out there.
If you'll do it on ours, you can do it here, man.
All right.
Give her. Be brave.
Stephen Crowder let loose the manifest from the Tennessee shooting there, the horrible thing that happened with the school. And so he released this manifesto. Nobody else was releasing it. He released it, and then he got interviewed by, I think it was MSNBC or CNN or something like that. Somebody interviewed him, and then they show one interview, and then they're like, "Oh, this is our interview with him," and you're like, "Well, that was kind of short. That doesn't sound like him." And then he's like, "Here's the actual interview," and he showed like the actual full footage and the highly editing. It didn't make him look bad, but it really didn't make him look like nuance. It didn't give the forethought, and I really hate that's one of the things that's happening in our media today, is that they won't even give you a fair shake, even if they did.
No.
Yeah, if you've got the power of the mouse to edit, you know, if you're going to take a long conversation and boil it down to 20 minutes, you can make somebody say anything, or you make them look any one
100%.
You know, it's one of the things too, right? I hear people a lot talk about documentaries. So you see this documentary, you see that documentary, either ones that are like for the mainstream sort of narrative or ones that are like way off base and, stuff like that. Like, and they're presenting it like evidence for a topic. I'm like, just hold on a little bit here. Because like the bad thing about something like a documentary is that you can do so much editing. You can control a narrative that just says something entirely different than your subjects are trying to say, because you can splice so much together.
You can really manipulate, for sure.
You can throw in music, you can throw in other visuals alongside of what they're saying. So you like, if I was to say, make some kind of statement that's fairly innocuous, if you just so much as put like minor key music underneath it, you can make me sound entirely nefarious.
100%. Yeah.
So it's like, don't
I've seen
trust.
A few documentaries like
Well,
that
and I
recently.
think a lot of people,
don't trust those things as news.
No, people are getting aware, becoming more and more aware of it, and I've been becoming aware of it over the last little while. I'd say 4 or 5 years, especially, and I'm actually shocked at
like
the ability of how they're able to manipulate it. And you're like, wait a minute, what is the motive here? Why would they actually do that? And now, I mean, we can go. I mean, there's a bunch of people that I think that's a fairly obvious question, but at the end of the day, the whole fact that that's actually happening, and there's so many people that are doing it, that's actually the way it is within an industry. I mean, you guys experienced it even with, some of the experiences you had earlier with doing some recordings. You have to fit a certain box and a threshold and narrative. A message even. It has to be, okay, this is the vanilla of what we're doing, kind of throwing it out there. And if you fall outside of that, well, you're difficult. We don't want to really deal with you all
don't want to work with
you. That's why we don't make anything on sponsorship yet. We're waiting for the right sponsor at the right time to come and be like, hey, we love what you're doing. Yeah. We want to be part of this, because we're not chasing anybody. That's one of the worst parts about it, is that everything, I'm sure like you, has cost you more money than you've gotten out of it. Like as much money as you put in, or as much money as you might get. I don't know.
I don't. This is free. There's I think I think like you guys, you go in there expecting that it's going to be more than you expect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But there is an element of, you just don't know what you know yet. Mm-hmm. And that part is, I think, a commitment on both your time and the financial end of things that you have to manage, and you're wondering exactly where that threshold is. Yeah. Not only immediately, but then over length of time too. And it can be massive. Like the amount of commitment it's something that you got to almost step back and really dig down and say, okay, how am I going to manage this? Because it's like everybody has a huge schedule and they're at a brink of exhaustion already. And then you throw this in there. So you have to have a pretty good moral reason why you want to do it, because without that, there's just, man, I'll tell you, I wonder how these people do it with just a phone on TikTok. I really question it, but that's not us either. But the alternative is there is a commitment, and it's not it comes at a cost that I think more people bear than you want to realize, like whether it's a family or friends or social or whatever it might be.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like if you're going to commit, even 1 or 2 nights a week to, recording something and then putting it out there, editing it, or whatever you have to do, that's 2 nights away from your family. Yep. That's a night away from a side project you have going on. It may mean you can't do a hustle, or you choose to do this over going out of town for work. So yeah, there is a cost that comes with it that's greater than just what it takes to buy the microphones and stuff like that. I
don't think if you're going in it to become wealthy, well, good luck.
You're delusional.
My best wishes to you guys. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that's not possible. It definitely is. It happens all the time. But I don't know if that should be the motivation behind it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So with this project that you've done with Kevin Unscripted, has there been any moments where you've heard feedback where you're like, oh, that makes it worth it?
100%. I told you I almost quit twice. I came pretty close to it. And the only reason I didn't was because when I voiced that frustration in that moment, I had a small core of listeners just say, okay, well, what do we got to do? There's nothing they can actually do to help out, because it's hard to try and delegate certain aspects, like, of where you want to go. but just having them listen to the goal, some of the hurdles that I was experiencing at that time, and then their feedback saying that it's appreciated. That's the juice. I mean, that means really everything. And to be able to give something to somebody that they normally wouldn't have, right there, these things are more than, I think, just a recording that the general public can absorb. These are recordings of somebody's story, their perspective, their challenge, whatever it might be. They're now recording something that, if it's done proper, is an heirloom. It's a representative of who they are. You just gave them something that they're going to be able to have value in for the rest of their life. There's appreciation at a lot of the episodes that I've done where I've gotten that, and it's like, okay, I nailed it. That was cool. It wasn't about anybody, like the listener, about anything, except I had a lot of satisfaction in being able to provide that for somebody else, and they felt like it was a good thing to have. And so that, okay, I'm sold. Away we go, right? And then you do also meet a lot of different people. Like the amount of people that I've had on where I had an opinion about somebody, and I think I'm a fairly good judging character, but I missed it way off the mark, boy, let me tell you. And that's cool, to figure out all of those nuances. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's kind of what I really get out of it, where it was those moments where I was like, okay, we're going to keep doing this, and it's probably going to take me for a lot more than I'm willing to admit, but it's worth it. It is worth it. And it's actually helped out with my wife too. She doesn't really like being too involved because it's a very public thing. And there is a sense of vulnerability there. But there's been a few episodes after where she's made new connections too. And it's helped out a lot. It's pretty neat to be able to expand the horizon that way.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep Devon's wife off the podcast. She is just such a hound, and she just keeps coming and saying, "Mike, I want to talk about all these things." And I'm like, "No, woman, you just know your place." As you can tell, it's a complete lie.
Yeah, she is like allergic to the idea of being on the podcast. I'm trying to make it happen. I'm not sure if it's gonna.
We're coming up on our 100th episode, and we're like, oh, number 100. We got to do something.
We got to finally bring Carissa.
Are you on 100?
Almost right on the brink.
Oh, because you don't number the episodes.
No.
So I don't ever really know where.
Mike literally went and counted on Spotify list.
No, I didn't have to.
Oh no,
I didn't have to. I just went on our distributing thing, and it shows the list, and it's like, this is the first one of 20 of 93. I'm like, 93.
Cool. Oh, see, I'm way less impressed. I thought you took the time to count.
I didn't want to take my shoes off.
Well, do you go through a distributing platform?
Yes.
Like a Buzzsprout or something?
We use Podbean.
Podbean. Yeah, that distributes it for us. It goes iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever, Spotify, and then everywhere else. Like just all of them. There's places that it's like, oh, you're released here. And I'm like, didn't know we did that.
Yeah. Well, I've had to go through for the audio only.
Yeah.
I go through Buzzsprout, and then I have to get all the URL. I get an account for all the different accounts, right? Get the URL, and then I embed it all, and then they're supposed to come up with analytics. But
this one we only had like three that I had to get into, and then it just kind of went everywhere, and I'm like, oh.
Are your analytics accurate?
No. I have no idea. I don't think so.
Brutal.
They, same with mine.
Our numbers are shit, and I'm like, they can't be that bad.
Well, if you go to each individual, like Apple, for an example, you have to go to their website. Don't, and then accumulate all that yourself.
Yeah, because Podbean gives us brutal numbers.
Yeah.
And only downloads. It doesn't list any streams, or so if you haven't actually clicked the download button, it doesn't register with Podbean at all. So that's a little frustrating, is not having really accurate analytics at all.
Yeah, I thought I'd get all freaking crafty, and I got a website. Yeah. And then I try and funnel everyone through my website so I can get better analytics. And then what I found was, like, my YouTube, especially when I went video, I started going onto the YouTube. Yeah. And I found out that all the hits on my website, even though it's a YouTube embedded video, it doesn't recognize it on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. I found that out from my last guest there, Dustin Porter, like, 'cause he's on there. He's like, that's what's happening. So I went in, because my analytics in all different areas are giving me
Yeah.
wildly different numbers, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, how come I got 4 freaking views on YouTube? And he's like, well, so he told me that. And I'm like, oh. So I went onto my website and I look at, because I have analytics and, on that.
Yeah.
And yeah, way different story.
I imagine he's going to be a handy guy to have in pocket when
I
trying to figure
can.
some of this stuff out.
There's been a few people like, I don't know, Skylar Roswell. He's with Systems in Fort St. John,
Okay.
and Giannis Palmer. Those guys are solid. Like they're right beside Eagle Vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys have helped me out with like the cameras and stuff. And
Yeah, we got to
different
figure
shit.
that stuff out.
They're super good
it's
guys.
terrifying
man. If you give
because
them a shout and just pick
yeah,
their
tell
brain.
them. Yeah, just say Kevin sent us.
Well, they're listening to it now.
Well, that's good.
Giannis is probably like, you son of a.
Throw it right under the bus.
Yeah. Well, you got to give them. I liked it. Well, for a while, I was doing little shout outs.
Yeah.
I quit doing that because it's clunky, man. I feel awkward doing it. And I did do some sponsorship stuff. Like people were wanting to help out a little bit. And so I was like, I don't know how much. I don't know how, like, I'm not sure how that kind of goes. So I figured out a way of doing it. I've tried different things and I'm just not big enough to really kind of
make an impact on their business enough to make it worth
so
it
you
for
know
them.
what, I'm like, this is way too damn awkward for me. Right now it's clunky. I feel this isn't. Let's figure this out a little bit later.
Do you feel like a little bit of a whore? Because I do. Every single time that I try and push anything on social media, I'm like, I fucking hate this.
No, because it's people that they're listeners and they're actually people that I like.
Yeah. The thing is, I got friends. I got friends all over the place, and I still feel whorish, like telling my friends, "Hey, you should listen to this," and they like it. Like, some
when
of them,
you're doing that,
like,
yeah, I don't.
I just hate it so much. I'm like, I want people to listen because they actually enjoy listening to it.
Self-promotion.
Yeah,
But
self-promotion.
I hate self-promotion.
It feels so dirty.
So I did an episode with Brian Reed Sr. down in Williams Lake. We're in his house and I was like all excited. One camera, we're doing this thing. It went off awesome. But at the beginning, I give out those mugs, right? He's like, well, we're putting this right in front so that the camera catches it. And I'm like, that's freaking tacky.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I want to do that. And he said, well, if you're not going to promote yourself, who else is going to? Okay, let's throw a whole line of mugs up there, right? But he was right, and that's coming from a guy who's started from nothing and he's a multi-millionaire. And he was like, nah, this is what you got to do. And he really was a support. He was another guy where I was like, he kind of floated my boat a little bit. And I was like, okay, because at that time I was like, man, I'm traveling now. Like we're going. And he was like, no, this is good. Put your cup in here. He gave me some pointers along the way when it came to like the whole, the business end of things.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Mike, like when it comes to that, it is very awkward.
Yeah.
Use it discretionary though, but I think there's no problem with it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when you just feel like you don't want people to think that you're building relationship with them so that you can get something out of them. And that was where I just don't like that feeling of, I want you to know I just actually do want to be your friend. Like when I reached out to Sean Newman there a little while ago, and I just reached out hoping maybe he'd consider it. Why not?
Yeah.
You miss every shot you don't take. And so I've been reaching out to some of these guys that are around and they reach back and I'm like, oh man, okay, all right, cool, let's do this. And so it was really lucky to just, take a chance, talk to people, and I'm looking forward to going back on his show. And
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
And he's had Don Cherry on. I'm sorry,
wow.
I shared the same platform as Don Cherry, which I think we should start a campaign of bring back Don Cherry because his cancel
100%.
bullshit's so stupid.
We want to make the world a better place. We had Poppies again. It was not a big deal, was it?
Yeah,
right.
No.
I can't believe he lost his job over that.
Yeah,
I know that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
like, I can't fathom how Poppies became something worth canceling somebody over. Like I know there was the whole thing of him saying like, "Oh, you people," but it's like that's a general phrase. Like,
I don't think he meant a demographic. I think he meant like everybody. You people that aren't actually wanting to support veterans. come on. I think that was the...
Yeah, it wasn't a racial demographic.
No.
It was an ideological demographic
Exactly.
that, transcended race. He was being very inclusive, let's be honest.
He was looking down on everybody equally. I was at a wedding, emceed a wedding recently, and I went there, and I was like, we got some games for the kissing, we got some rules for the kissing game, and I know you people, so... And then somebody said, did you say you people? I'm like, I said what I said. And as an MC, that's a good way to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like, we'll get somebody else. But
you gotta own it.
yeah, that's the thing. You can't cower. Like when people start telling you what you can and cannot say on a like platform or platforms like Spotify, like all these places, like, oh, you can't say that. It's like, why? Tell me why. Why can't I say something?
Well,
Even if you
they're trying to
disagree.
dictate the intentions you were implying, and that's not what you're trying to say. When you say you people or, some of those words, at least give the guy a courtesy to be able to say, okay, well, what exactly...
What did you mean when you said that?
Yeah.
Because everybody, I don't care how righteous you are, there's words that you're going to say that aren't really... They're taken in a different context than how you're trying to have them meet, like the meaning behind it, right? And so just a little clarity. Hey, whoa, what was that about? Right? Yeah. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take your job.
It was a good thing with this person. They had nobody to MC their wedding. I was they had
no replacement.
No replacement. She was like, what makes a good wedding? And I was like, a good MC. You get a good MC, you can have a great reception. Because I've been to weddings with bad MCs, and that sucks.
Yeah, they do a lot.
And so I told her, I'm like, get a good MC. She's like, I have nobody. And I'm like, really? Nobody? Not a single person? And she's like, yeah, I have nobody at all. And I'm like, fuck. I've done 3. If you want me to do it, call those people. I'll do it. And so, well, maybe more than 3. But I've done quite a few now. And so it just became a very just coming up with some lines on the spot, just do whatever. And so, she had nobody else. And that didn't give me carte blanche to be an asshole, but it did allow me to just make it comfortable.
Yeah.
Talk to the people like they're actual people. And it was fun, as much fun as it could have been.
Do you find there's overlay, though, between a podcast and public speaking like that?
Yeah, to a degree. Like, you definitely get more comfortable in speaking off the cuff. Like, for instance, like you can respond to what's going on.
Yeah, because you've gotten used to, one, being criticized or being judged by thousands of people, and just getting used to talking in front of people, like just speaking and not thinking about what every single person's thinking about and judging you. And and it's
I
just,
froze.
Really?
Yeah, man.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I never even, and it was kind of one of those things where I was aware of what was going on, but I couldn't change it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm not a public, like you put me in front of a crowd. Oh my, I don't know why you would think it's the same, but it isn't. Not for me anyways.
Well, maybe for us, we reverse engineered it.
Oh yeah.
Like, cause like if I'm being honest, like podcasting is something that for me works way better with other people.
Oh yeah.
But doing stuff like public speaking was something that we did a lot in the motorcycle club and stuff like that. So I almost wonder if we reverse engineered it.
Yeah, maybe.
We were more comfortable in positions where there was people in front of us and you had to go ahead and act and communicate. And we just translated that into this.
Yeah. I don't know what it is really. It's something that you just got to push through it and say, okay.
Well, for myself, it's a little bit different than Devon.
Go.
Devon came into it from the motorcycle community of being put into a place of authority above these guys in the motorcycle club and then teaching them and helping them grow, become better Christians and recognize who they were. Well, myself, my father's a pastor. He's...
Oh, yeah, you were a PK.
I was a PK. So, pastor's kid, and you just get used to seeing your dad talk in front of people, and then once in a while he'd bring you up for something, and then I got into theater, and then I was a little bit into music, and so I was in a band for a stint, and just getting used to being in front of people, getting used to having a microphone in your hand, and that was just something that came naturally because it was something that I did.
You enjoy the hell out of this.
Oh,
don't
I do.
you?
I do.
Yeah, you can tell, right? You can like Sim. He's like,
you are definitely in it. That's
there are
good.
points when I
You've
have
got
to
a
use
passion.
self-control and pull myself away and be like, let's Let Devon talk.
Am I talking too much? And then you're probably afterwards like, son of a, I wonder, was I really talking too much?
I love it. Like I let him give enough rope to hang himself, and then I catch him on something. It's fantastic.
He does it a lot. I said something stupid the other night, and Devon's like, I'm going to kick back on that. And I'm like, cool. And I was wrong. I was very wrong. And I'll admit when I was wrong
As
in
usual.
something. As long as I'm willing to admit it. Like some cowards out there was like, they double down and be like, no, fuck you and fuck everybody else. I'm like,
yeah, you're not winning that one.
yeah. And sometimes I'll be like, you know what? No, I was wrong. Speaking off the cuff, a little too much whiskey. Not enough whiskey. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Ooh, that's a segue.
is that a segue?
Huh?
You guys into whiskey?
Love it.
That was a silly question.
If there
wasn't
was
it?
going to be an official sponsor of our podcast, it would just be whiskey.
Whiskey in general.
yeah.
In general.
So you see what's in front here? I don't know if you guys.
I do see
So
it.
this is. I got this for Christmas last year, and this is.
Oh, you got a smoker set there.
Yeah. So you know what it is? Because I've never
Oh.
even seen this until I got it, and I've tried it a few times, and it's pretty cool. You just can't do too much of it because it leaves a resin on the glass, and then it's way
Okay.
too strong.
Interesting.
But yeah, there's for the listeners out there, it's just a smoker, and it's a wooden puck that with a screen in the top, and it sits on top of the glass.
That
So
is
we'll
so
pour some
Yeah,
whiskey.
you take like a little creme brulee torch. And
Yeah, well, it's right here.
Yeah,
Right
there you
here.
go.
And then you put the what do I got here? I got
a creme brulee
oak wood.
torch. Yes, you are the more pretentious of the two of
Right?
us.
I told you.
You know,
That being said, your mother makes a delightful creme brulee. I wish it was a dig. It's
It's not.
I've heard this being called a crack torch before, a creme brulee. I mean, I guess it's a multi-purpose tool, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's right. You can use it for fancy desserts or your drug addiction.
I'm gonna get us some whiskeys.
yeah.
That sounds fantastic. I'm not gonna fight you on it.
I'll just keep this going here.
Yeah.
So why don't we? What do you guys like here? 40 Creek. Let's try the. Let's just try this.
I'm going to say dealer's choice. I just love whiskey, so whatever you.
Okay. So we'll set this all up. Do you guys take a little bit of ice, or is it straight for you?
It depends on the whiskey.
Yeah.
So what do we have here?
Oh, let's take a look.
I'm gonna grab.
Game of Thrones, age 15.
Single.
I don't want
Okay,
it
no,
into-
it's a Scotch. I'm gonna have it neat.
Neat. I'm going to refer to Devon on that one. Take it neat as well.
You are okay. Well, I'll go with the ice. Then.
Yeah.
Boom. We'll put this back in the freezer.
Yeah, we had an episode that we recorded 2 days ago. Saturday, and it was the same thing. Just getting into the whiskey a little. It was before noon, and we start going, and it fucked up my whole Saturday.
Can I get you to do me a favor?
Yeah.
And just record this.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to overlay this with some of the other video.
All right.
Oh, neat.
So this one will be mine. Yours. A little bit more. You like that? That's.
Sure.
I think they're all about the same.
Perfect.
We like our whiskey.
Okay. So we'll start with Devin. Which one would you like for flavor? Would you like the cherry? We got the hickory wood. Got the oak wood, and I think I got one more. Oh, here we go.
I'm
Apple.
going hickory. I'm going to say hickory.
Apple,
I'm-
hickory, oak, and cherry.
I'm gonna go with oak.
Oak.
It seems appropriate for Scotch.
See,
So it comes with this fancy little golden spoon. So you know it's
Well, that
good
is
when you
fancy.
got a golden
When you-
spoon, right?
What did it say? The silver spoon. That's the.
Oh, wrong.
it's actually not as good. Silver spoon is not good for caviar because it changes the flavor.
Oh yeah,
You
that's
want
right.
to use a wood spoon.
Silver does?
Yeah, it changes
Really?
the flavor of the. What is it?
The acidity. I don't know.
Caviar,
I don't know.
whatever.
I've never had caviar.
I've had caviar a couple of times, and I never really actually liked it that much, to be honest with you. I don't know what the
What the appeal is, right? I don't see it.
Oh, that looks so cool.
Have you guys had smoked whiskey before?
Yeah. I do
He's
that
aboard.
often. I do that often with my dad. Like if we're having a drink on Sunday evening, we'll smoke old fashions is what we do.
Oh, I love old fashions.
Yeah, you throw
Shout
a little
out to-
smoke on that. It's fantastic.
Do you know who makes really good old fashions in Dawson Creek? Post and Row.
Oh
and
yes,
Row.
they do.
Shout out to the Post and Row. So I'll just give this a little deal there. Here you go, Devon. Oh, I just made a little bit of a mess there. Oops.
Oh, that smells fantastic.
Okay, Mike. What flavor would you like?
Hickory, please. I'm a sucker for hickory. Oh, it smells so good.
Yeah, smoked drinks is just a vibe.
Do you guys know much about whiskey? Like, as far as the craft of it all? Because there's like, you can go down a rabbit hole when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I've tried to go down the rabbit hole of like what it takes to make whiskey, and it's so overwhelming almost that I'm like I can't.
Yeah.
I kind of figured out what I like, but I can't go down because I'll just spend 2 weeks going down a rabbit hole for no reason and not think about anything else.
Yeah, you do it with tobacco too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, Devin loves the pipe, the tobacco pipe.
I just found out a buddy of mine that, like a guy I know through work, he orders all of his tobacco in a leaf form. And then he just cuts it all up and rolls his own cigarettes, and it's just a lot more pure that way.
Oh yeah, there's
And a fraction of the cost. I didn't know you can actually do that.
yeah. There's a fella in town that started growing his own tobacco leaves.
Oh, really?
Like I don't know if you know Josh from Peaceburg Building Products.
No.
Peaceburg, yeah, Josh Peaceburg. He is an eccentric fellow. Yeah,
Oh, there you go.
he grows his own tobacco. Yeah, that one dropped.
That one. Sorry, man. Sorry, Devin.
It's tricky to get the right mixture of the stuff in the glass to make it flow.
I gotta get me one of those. Where did you get that thing?
I don't know. I can ask.
I'll get my
My wife
father.
got
I
it
gotta
for,
get my father-in-law to make one.
Christmas.
Nick could
Yeah,
totally
I
make
can't
that.
see
He's
it
got a
being that hard
lathe.
to make.
He's got a wood lathe and everything.
Yeah. Another way to do it is if you just get like a big plank of a kind of wood and take your torch, you just like get one spot of it really, really good and hot to the point it lights, and then
Yeah.
put the glass upside down on it. Let the whole glass smoke, and then you make your cocktail in a shaker, and then pour it in after you tip the glass over. That's a nice way to do it too if you don't have the chips, because you can just go to like Windsor Plywood and get like a nice hunk of good wood, and
Yeah, no
and
kidding.
do it that way.
You want another cheap form too? Now that we're on that topic, you want to smoke meat? You just get a sardine can. You clean it out real good. You put some wood chips, even those pellets that you put in a pellet stove.
Yeah.
You put it in the sardine can, and then you just kind of get it smoldering, smoking. You put it on the barbecue. And the barbecue keeps it hot
Yeah.
enough while you're
That it
cooking
keeps
your
going.
steak, and then it smokes the meat in the barbecue. It's a bit of a poor man's way of doing, but it works.
A poor man's smoker.
Exactly.
Ooh, I like that.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
This is awesome. This is long overdue.
Right. Andy was telling me, he's like, oh yeah, Kevin wants to get a hold of you. Kevin wants to get, I'm like, oh, fuck. And I was like,
Well,
this
I
week,
tried
I'm like,
a couple of times. I was like,
Oh,
well,
what-
and I don't know, like, do you guys check your, like, are you on social media and kind of get into the comments or anything, or do?
not recently. We're horrible at the social media side of things.
I pay attention to the amateur Christian one much more because it gets more traction.
Yeah, like we haven't found ourselves getting a whole lot of traction, and at some point you just be like, fuck it, we're just gonna release our episodes. And
If a guy sends PMs though, like that comes up on both of our phones, that's probably the.
Well, that's
easiest
how I
way to
sent
do
it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
through Facebook. That's a man. Facebook is a tool that I've used for just about. I mean, that's a go-to. I don't have the phone number for a lot of people I want to have on, or
Yeah.
anybody. So it's like, well, how
Yeah,
do I
you-
get a hold of this guy, really? Or these people? You try sending an email, and actually emails do work, but yeah, I don't know, not really all that.
It's not as
often.
instantaneous of a connection as PMs are.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Oh, I feel bad if we missed yours. We haven't been trying to be dicks.
Oh, it's been a while now. You're going to have to scroll back for a while. But then I heard Andy Dreger.
Yeah.
Shout out to Andy, by the way. Man,
Yes.
solid guy.
He is. He's
Yeah.
such a good dude, man.
And
We've,
he's a mutual friend. So then I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, why don't you guys just tell him to give me a shout or say hi. We got to get these guys on the podcast and drink some whiskey.
Yeah.
They're my kind of people here. Like,
I didn't see it on there.
you did find, yeah,
No,
you found it,
no, I
you?
didn't.
Oh, no.
There was nothing. I could show you because we have like 8 people. We had 8 people, and it was like one of them was like, "Oh, your audio didn't come through," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" And I left town immediately after
Oh,
releasing
that
it.
was so embarrassing. We
That
released an
sucks when
episode,
stuff
and
does.
there was just nothing. It was 2 hours of silence.
Yeah. And I was like, I didn't give it due diligence because I was literally rushing out the door as I released it and thought nothing of it. And I get halfway down the road towards Edmonton or whatever, and yeah, nothing. Just buddy
man.
messages me. I'm like, okay.
It happens.
Yeah.
I could tell you stories of stuff where I was like, oh man, I'm done. I can't believe that happened. Just glitches all the time.
Our very first recording, we sat down, tried to do the computer thing, like just using the computer audio and the microphones that we had and all this, and nothing got recorded. I don't remember what we talked about, but yeah, it was really discouraging. It was like just a really bad start. And then we got into the XLR mics and the recorder and all that other stuff, like actually put some money down. And
Yeah, that was literally just us trying to like feel it out. We're like, we turned on the computer and kind of found like a little microphone that we could plug directly into the computer
Yeah.
and tried to record it that way. And it was just a disaster. But that
Yeah.
was just us trying.
Yeah.
Just
Wow,
trying, right?
The learning curve is pretty wild, isn't
and,
it?
Yeah, and so then we took about a month to find all the things we needed, and then got into it. And then the first one we did, when we actually got like a little mixing board and real microphones and stuff like that, it went off without a hitch. We're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
now we're off
Yeah.
to the races.
It's
here.
fun, isn't it?
well, we got
This is
we got
not something I thought I would ever enjoy. Like, if you ever said you're going to be on radio of some
Yeah.
kind, I would have been like, man.
yeah.
Okay, show me this future me. I'm slapping him.
Who is going to listen to me talk for 2 hours every week?
Yeah. Oh, it's just not
Apparently
happening.
not a lot of people. Just a few. A few. Thing is, I see the amount of effort that you put in to actually, promote yourself. Because like you said, who's going to promote you if you don't? And you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, let's do it. Because like you drive by it on the Highway 97 every single time you come up here. It's like, oh, okay, this guy's putting his money where his mouth is. And I appreciate that because I'm like, I can't, everyone's
Takes a
got their-
while. Well, the way I started with that was I would just trade. And that's how I've learned a lot of different stuff. Like when it came to the fence itself, building a fence, I'm not a welder. I had no idea what to do. And so or building a roof, I trade my time helping people who are actually in that craft.
Yeah.
And then I learn enough to be able to kind of figure it out. And I got support.
Yeah.
And when it came to advertising, and the other thing too, I guess, to go along with that is I guess what I learned the most out of a lot of this is we need to get engaged and help out and learn more. Mm-hmm. We need to figure things out. So whether that's helping people out and then there's, a little bit of their tip for tat kind of thing, like horse trading, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or just getting involved in some way and getting your name out there because I guess you could tie it even, we talked about Remembrance Day. The way I see it is we're really agitated with virtually everything. It doesn't matter who you are or what side of the fence you're looking at things. And I hate categorizing things because I'm not like a liberal or conservative, or I hate being able to compartmentalize stuff. And the one thing I realize is that not enough people, everyone's too damn busy, and not enough people are actually taking advantage of democracy. I didn't even know what democracy was when I first started podcasting. Mm-hmm. And I think it's disrespectful for a lot of the people who made the country, and this is where the veterans kind of come in, to get so wrapped up in your own personal life, not to exercise democracy. I think it should be something that everybody should feel obligated to get involved in one form or another to try and keep the country.
But that can be dangerous when you have an not going to say uneducated, miseducated society. Like, look at the education system as we know it today. Are we putting out the best students? Are we putting out people who are critical thinkers or very good at ticking boxes? You look at what's happening, especially in America right now with their higher education system. You're not getting an enlightened society. So it's one thing to be politically involved and another thing to be politically enlightened, because you could be very involved but very dumb. And so, yes, it can
that's
be
the
good.
point. I think
then
Canada
it's
and
mob
the system
rule.
is awesome, but the people in the system are they're not. They should be replaced. And I agree that
it's really rough. Mike and I were talking about this on our way up here, and like we were talking about what it's like watching Parliament, like when you tune into what's going on there and the debates that are happening. And I'm thinking, like, when are the adults entering the room?
Yeah, I know.
It's very disillusioning.
It is, but that's what I mean. It's all the wrong people in politics.
Yeah, but the people who should be there don't want any part of it, because they're like, oh, they're going to drag my name through the mud. Or even in your own party, it doesn't matter. You have to. I don't know.
You got to play the game.
You got to play the game. Better words than I was going to say.
That's true. You become a machine over time, and the people that get involved in the short term, I think, have good intentions. But after a while, I actually made an analogy that seems to fit. That kind of describes that. Like, when you're growing up, I think everybody when they're growing up looks at their parents and like, I'm going to do that different.
Yeah.
I'm going to, and the next thing you know, when you're a parent and an adult, you're saying the same damn things your parents said. Or let's say a boss.
Yeah.
When I become a boss, I'm not going to be a boss. I'm going to be a leader. And then next thing you know, you're that guy, and
that has to crack the whip.
Yeah. And then the same thing happens. And I think politics is similar. You're like, I'm going to get into politics. I'm not going to be that guy. And at the very beginning, I think you have the drive and the intentions. And then over time, you just start becoming part of the system. Mm-hmm. The part that I was talking about when it comes to democracy is that when nobody's engaged, democracy crumbles. Mm-hmm. And I agree, wholeheartedly, Mike, with what you're saying, where a lot has to change, especially within our education. But if those same people get involved in any way, sports, or even spend a half an hour getting in, learning about civic politics, never mind provincial and federal, then those same people are at least getting engaged enough to be able to make a knowledgeable vote. Or something they feel represents themselves. And if they're like, none of it works. No. Well, that's fine. But at least you're learning more, and more people are getting engaged. But things are happening right now because people are too busy to even sit down at meetings.
Yeah.
That's and don't even hear about it. Like, I can't remember the last time where I was even made aware of some kind of important decision that's going to be made either for a region or municipality. Yes.
I stumble all the time. So glad.
Can we all just agree that's a stupid word?
It is. I agree.
All right. Thank you.
You love your $2 words. Come on.
I know. I just suck at saying them.
I hear you. I'm with you. But anyways, what were you saying there?
Yeah, I just
lost your train of thought, didn't you?
I can't remember the last time I heard of a meeting where something important was being discussed, decided, on something that is good, that is going to affect, our city, our neighborhood, our community. Mm-hmm. So like even that, just like we don't even know enough to know when to pay attention or what to pay attention to. Yeah, because. I mean, and maybe this is, maybe we're part of the problem too, right? Where we're always like tuning into podcasts, tuning into things that are happening on the big picture, tuning into news that is wrapped up in federal policies and stuff like that without bothering to check into what is going on at home.
You see, I would agree and disagree. I would agree and disagree with that because CBC and CTV have cornered the market on that, where if you're going to say something, well, it's going to be it's going to be censored. You say something very important, it's going to be censored by mainstream media. And if you ever got any traction on it, they're looking to censor us right now. So even if we did want to talk about something important that did affect us on a global scale, or
but I'm not talking about global. I'm talking about
a municipal scale.
Think smaller. Like below the radar of CBC is where a lot of these things where you can
but they're
actually
still owned by big
happen.
media. Look at
What is going on in Fort St. John? I was going to think of
local radio stations, but I don't want to.
What is going on in Fort St. John that is controlled by big media? Nothing. There's nothing there. We're just not a connected community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when it comes to trying to source a few of those things out, I know what you're saying, Devon, but I think the motivation changes a lot when all of a sudden you're affected negatively in a personal way. Now all of a
because
sudden you're like, okay,
then you're paying attention.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So,
now
like,
all of a
what
sudden
can
all
we
those
do?
little
Well,
meetings.
look what we're doing here. Like we're doing
What
podcasts.
can we do to bring it like now? I mean, we're saying we could do it right here, but like, maybe we should put our money in our mouth is and like do some podcasts on the BCP about what's happening in our community.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't even have to. That seems cumbersome, and then like who's going to listen?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think. I mean,
That is
right?
that is
Because I've tried it. Man, I've had all the
Dude.
mayors on and MLAs, and you think those are land? People are like, what the fuck? Actually, no, that's a lie. That is, those ones actually did way better than I was
Really?
expecting. Yeah, a few of them really did good.
Well, I mean,
So
I
can't
listened
say that,
to the
but
one
still,
where you
like,
had Zimmer on, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it because it was nice to hear somebody who's plugged into politics talk for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
It was nice to see that happen in a space where they weren't trying to yell at the other side across from Parliament or try to fit a little bit into a stump speech.
Yeah.
And just like interact with a real person and have real questions asked of them where they get to think and actually speak their mind and let their personality shine through. Like, I would love to see more politicians engage in long form discussion.
They want to. Every one of them that have been on
Well,
here, because they're not
They
given
want
that
to a
opportunity.
degree because I've reached out to Zimmer and heck, I go to church with him and I've seen him. I'm like, hey man, when are you coming on my podcast? And he's like, oh, I didn't know you had a podcast. And I'm like, okay, cool. So he wants to be on, and I reach out for
It's a
him,
grind,
and it's
though.
really hard.
You
And
know,
I'm
I
like,
told you about the 4-month delay.
Yeah.
And that's trying to walk that line of we're like, okay, am I harassing? How do I go about this in a
And
unique
that's-
way?
and
Like, I
that's
don't want to copy and paste, and
And that's one of our problems is we don't chase people. We really don't. We're like, you don't want to be with us? Cool. We don't
You
want
know
you.
what the
like, and it's
icebreaker
really
is?
difficult.
sit down with anyone. And this is the only thing that worked when
Yeah.
it came to anybody that's in a political elected official, I should say.
Yeah.
Is take them out for a coffee or a lunch and like book it through their person that does their scheduling and sit down and spend a half hour or an hour or whatever
Okay.
and do a face-to-face first, because they got to filter out the crap, right? And
Yeah.
and a face-to-face is effort sake, because their time literally is like they got so much going on.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I
you-
can understand that if they were to take one listen at our podcast, they may have good reason to be like, I don't know about that one.
But I
'cause,
want
like,
that reason. I want them to know.
You'd be surprised.
I
You would be
can
surprised.
I can envision a world where we sit down with with an MLA or something like that, and we're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Him or him, us saying that to
You
him
just
or him saying
gotta,
us
you
to
gotta
us.
ask it so that they have a chance to be able to explain themselves.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We always try to go. You've heard it. We sit down with Will Smith there, who's a hyper liberal.
Vanilla Will.
Vanilla Will.
Shout out to Vanilla Will.
Oh, love that guy. Love
he
him to
is-
death.
He brings a lot to the.
He really does.
He is my favorite guest.
Yeah.
Like 100%. Like, even though we probably land on the opposite side of ideologies more than anybody else I know, like, we're still basically the same person.
Yeah.
And he's just, we're basically the
Very
same
much.
person still. Like, the divide
No,
isn't as
I
big
agree,
as you
though.
think it is.
I agree. He brings a lot to the table, and there's some pushback, but it's in a way where you're like, oh, man, you know what? That actually
don't
is kind of a cool little bit of nugget, right? And then you
Yeah.
can just go from there, and then you check and balance each other a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
I
I
know
don't wanna
you
live
guys
in an
have
echo
checked him a
chamber.
few times too, so it's an even.
Oh, you haven't heard it yet. Oh, we have
We
got
have a new
episode
one. We
coming
have a
out
new
here.
Vanilla Will one coming out this week.
Oh, really?
And it's very good.
Okay, plug it. When's it coming out? The date?
Wednesday, November. What's the date today?
It's the 13th today.
15th. It'll be out 15th. Tomorrow night it'll be out.
Oh, sorry, but this podcast won't be
I
out. So
know.
now the listener,
They'll have to
if
check
you-
it.
If you
Go
go
check it out.
If you go check it out, it's there right now.
When this one comes out, we're gonna have another great guest. That's a great. Oh, we got some cool people. We got a friend of ours who is we'll call him the Crete.
Yeah, the Creed. He didn't want his name put out there because there could be some like career backlash, just
Because of the life that he has
fair
chosen
enough.
and his ministry and whatnot. And we're like, look, we don't want anything to disparagely or to misrepresent you.
No.
Well, we want you to be yourself and feel like you're talking to friends. And he had such
such an
amazing.
amazing story.
Well, I'm
It was-
excited. I can't wait to listen to this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
it's such, it was heartbreaking, at times, but it was so neat to see somebody be able to just sit down and just let it fly of what they are, who they are, without walls up. that was so neat. I felt really privileged that he was able that he felt comfortable enough to do that in the pod hole there. Like that was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what makes it.
So
like
you
it's worth
guys, like you asked me that question, and I think my answer describes exactly what you were just talking about there, because you just gave him something that he probably, this stuff, I hate saying it, but it is, it's therapeutic.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Like you're completely drained emotionally, physically,
Yeah.
but you feel like $1 million freaking dollars.
Oh, yeah.
You
You
get it
sleep
out
great.
there.
That
Do you sleep
depends on
good
how
after?
much whiskey you
Oh,
have.
I crashed. That's true. That is true. That's an
whiskey
element.
helps, but
There's been a couple episodes where we got to the end of it and we're like, I think we overdid it. And then an hour later, I'm white girl wasted.
he was trying to pour. He was like this. He was like, oh, the lid.
There was a time and a place there where I think I was actually bringing a lot of pain to the podcast that isn't there anymore. But I was abusing the bottle in order to deal with that. But the podcast itself did help with moving through a lot of that stuff that we were working through. So yeah, it is therapy.
Oh, I haven't told you yet. I'm doing a dry
weird how
November.
that just surfaces. Sorry, go.
I'm going to be doing a dry January.
Oh,
I don't know if I'm going to do the whole, podcast exemption that I've heard people do, but yeah, I'm going to go to dry January and be like, just no more liquor, just
dry
January.
January, except
Yeah.
for the podcast.
I was thinking about it.
That's like saying you're California sober. Come on, dude.
Yeah, I'm really debating on it because I'm like, I have the same thing when you're talking about abuse. I'm like, am I drinking for the sake of drinking? Am I actually enjoying it? I'm just, like, it is a great social lubricant when it comes to coming on a podcast and just getting it flowing. But you've heard me without it. I've been doing just fine. So I worry about myself, but at the same time, if I can't control the liquor's controlling me. So I'm going to take that moment and be like, all right, for this month, I'm just not going to, I haven't done it for a couple of years because I didn't feel a need. But I think this January, I'm going to be doing a very dry January.
Good.
And,
I think it's a good thing to do.
I think it's a great thing.
It is.
Test the boundaries.
Yeah.
Because you never know. Like, everybody's always in denial, and I don't think any one of us is better off than the next guy that's saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So test it. See where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going dry for January,
Yeah.
and then see how that is. And if you're like, oh man, you're looking for reason in like a podcast.
Yeah, then
And
it gives
that's
you
why
the
I'm
ability
like,
to
okay.
understand, like,
Yeah.
I
Where's
do
that
have a
line?
dependence.
Yeah.
You
'Cause-
need to test yourself to know yourself. That's the beauty of
100%.
fasting.
Yeah.
Even as
You're into that?
Oh,
I don't look it.
I didn't mean that. See, it's one of those things where that word.
I understand. I don't look it, but
Didn't mean that.
yes, we abstain from things for the sake
we
of.
abstain for things for certain times. I mean, that's a big part of certain kinds of religious life is fasting.
Yeah,
And,
I see.
So there's
how long do you fast? I'm into that stuff. Like I'm actually doing a lot of that right now.
Good. That's
it's
awesome.
We could go down that rabbit hole for if you want to go down there, we can go down.
With
that
that
one.
being
Sure,
said-
let's talk fasting.
Fasting fucking sucks. Not a fan.
There's some that are easier than others. Like I remember when it was.
So what do you do for a fast? You just go cold turkey. You're eating one day and then boom, that's it. You're done.
Well, it depends. It depends. So right now, like I've recently converted to Eastern Orthodoxy, so that in itself has a fasting schedule that I'm trying to figure out, and that's got different kinds of fasts that you do at different times of the year. But up till now, I've kind of been like, it's kind of been by the seat of my pants, like. It's kind of been
As you feel called.
As I feel called, what do I feel like I should do now, or just maybe fast for health or something like that. But like I have did something called the Daniel fast. This was like 10 years ago, and it's derived from the book of Daniel, where like the King Nebuchadnezzar, said like, all right, I want all these slaves I would round up to be fattened up and, made strong, and they're gonna be my consort, my royal guard and advisors and stuff. So they got a bunch of eunuchs from Israel, and they made them eat pork and food and feasting and wine and all these things. And there's a couple of guys that were like, yeah, no, we don't want to do that. This is against our conviction, against our faith. We're not going to eat pork. And then they went farther and just said, no, we're only going to eat vegetables and wheat. That's it. And so certain Pentecostal kind of churches have looked at that and been like, okay, that's a thing we're going to do. And so they find other things in Daniel, and they kind of came down to a number of 21 days of eating only vegetables. And so I did that once. That sucked.
It's worse than actual fasting. I've done a couple of those things,
I was
and
hungry
vegetables is
all
worse.
the time. No matter how many vegetables I ate, I was always hungry and pissed off.
Yeah. I have a little bit of an understanding over the years when it comes to that. Don't get me wrong. There was always a disclaimer after all of that. You got to feel like you got to be like, I'm not a professional and this and that. But the truth is, when it comes to fasting, because I went on the keto. And this was a while ago at the very beginning. And if you want to see the difference in the power in keto, look at the very first picture I did on my episode was with my daughter. And so we used to just reading behind you, we'd do like a picture for the thumbnail because it's just audio. Yeah. So if you take a look at that picture and then you compare it to where I am now, you can see where I've gained a wild amount of weight. Mm-hmm. But before that, I was 3 months before that, I was like 265, and in 3 months, I went from 265 down to 190, 85.
I've seen some amazing results through keto.
And then people are like, it's dangerous.
I've never tried it.
I learned a lot, and I mean, I can't speak enough about it. I did a podcast with my mom because she came off of diabetes with a lot of that, and like the whole thing. But as long as you keep the whole healthy aspect, this isn't about weight loss. This isn't about anything except for the healthy element. I can understand why maybe that whole act is incorporated into faith, because the benefits, if done proper, are unbelievable. Like your growth hormones go through the roof, cell rejuvenation goes up. It's the only time that you can actually have something like that in your body happen, because your body can't multitask between digestion and maintenance, really. Yeah. And the biggest thing, our diet, sugar.
Sugar, yeah.
And there's two things to go back to that without going too far into it is one, you're just kind of going back to a basic way of eating, like how it used to be before we had grocery stores and convenience stores. So it's like the hunter-gatherer. Yeah. Knock the glycogen down. And if you don't think that's a healthy way of eating, then just think, how is it possible for when a newborn is first born to grow and develop and build bones and brain matter and everything off of just sheer body or fat, colostrum, breastfeeding, before you even get to solids? The body needs it, and that's its original primary form of being able to function.
Mm-hmm. Hence why vegetables sucks.
Well, you know what? The vegetables are good, but the rule of thumb is anything that grows above ground is good to go. Anything below ground is no go.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm sorry. I love potatoes.
Yeah.
I love potatoes.
So much sugar.
Well, of course you do. Oh man, carbs, sugar.
I'm a prairie boy, so I grew up around the flatlands, and just the mashed potatoes is my.
It is. You know what? It's a legit. It's an addiction, and I had to go to camp to knock it. And I describe it like alcohol. Yeah. Matthew Perry, he just passed away, and one of the things that he said, because he was an alcoholic and he was really trying to get some really good points across, and he said, look, I'm an alcoholic, and I have control and a presence of mind of my life up until I have the first drink. Past that, I have no control. It's just the way it is. So if you eat the way you are now and you finally get into eating proper and you go through with that withdrawal of sugar where your body needs it because it is a form of energy, and you can get it to recognize ketones as a form of energy and let your pancreas develop that. Yeah. You have control. But if you don't maintain that for a period of time, it's like that first drink, man. You take one shot, anything with sugar in it, and you're freaking
you're
done.
You're off the rails.
And you're gorging. Your body's going, nah, I want more.
Yeah. Well, the dopaminergic effect of sugar that does to your mind, like it's addictive. Mm-hmm. It is something that if you let it will consume you. And that's the thing. There was a huge push for it in the I want to say starting in like the 60s, 70s and stuff like that. Well, they were putting sugar in everything, and fat makes you fat. That whole, maybe that was earlier than that. But this whole idea of what fat does to your body and what sugar does to your body, and there was this huge thing of sugar is good, fat is bad.
Yeah,
and it's like, no, fat is phenomenal. It's good for you. There's an entire generation of people who still believe that if you drink Diet Pepsi or Diet Coke, it's better for you than regular Coke because it has less sugar or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, no, how about we just eat healthy food, have healthy drink. And I love Diet Coke. I'm a sucker for it. And yeah, just this idea that fat makes you fat. And I'm like, I'm trying to get my kids out of that because, I don't know, it looks gross.
It's hard. It's hard, but the Inuit are doing it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, they live off the stuff.
Yeah.
And survive.
I got a buddy who lived in Kalaktuk or something like that.
Tuktoyaktuk.
North of there, like in
really?
in Tiaktuk, but in Kalaktuk. I don't know. One of these places has got a lot of clucking sounds. No offense, whatever. And he dried the whole blubber or whatever, and like the seal fat, and he said I was so warm. Like he felt like he could just run forever. Like it's
nitrous.
good for you. Yeah,
It is.
Yeah, and so I'm like, oh, that's so interesting, and we like to think we're ahead of it all because we got science and blah blah blah. It's like, let's go back.
There's ancient wisdoms
Yeah.
that we forget about because we think we've got it hacked, and we think we can like figure it out with new sciencey things. But you're like, you know what? There's wisdom that hunter-gatherer societies had that we discount.
Yeah.
So next episode, we're going to be making a case for human sacrifice because the ancients, they had something. Some things they might have been wrong about. Sorry.
I can't wait to get into it.
I can't wait to hear that because I'm curious to see the angle on it. But hey, it's possible. I've seen weirder stuff.
Yeah.
I agree. Ancient,
joke.
like there's a lot to it. Like if you think about just the crap that happened back then. General population didn't have the ability to read or understand that, and then it was left to the elites, and how much of that has been, especially through the Dark Ages, carried through. But
you got to be
elites, pretty crafty.
The elites aren't the people.
Pyramids.
Yeah, the elites, they aren't the people that really kept wisdom going. It's grandma. It was grandpa. Yeah. It was the priest that loved the community that like was trying to look after them and look after their soul. It was the shaman. Like there was that kind of wisdom is what goes through the ages and keeps people functioning. Because elites are always going to be elites. Like they're always going to have their own angle that works out for their benefit on your back.
Yeah, and they're just like us. They're too damn busy to look at the information and spend the time going through the literature to learn something. But the information is there. Yeah, or it was.
Yeah. Do you ever hear these people that talk about their royal heritage? It's like, oh, I come from the royal lineage of this person.
Everyone comes from a freaking royal family.
And as somebody who comes from a royal lineage, I could say that don't mean shit. That don't mean shit. Guess who was best at procreating? Yeah, as somebody who has, who was procreating the best? The hierarchy. The people who could put out like so many kids. It's like, they might not have been kings, and my uncles and aunts, or great great uncle was king of Belgium. You look it up, King Beaudoin. It was a thing, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, wait, that doesn't mean shit. It just means that we were better off. Yeah.
For a time.
For a little while.
There's cyclical patterns.
Yeah, everyone's like, oh, no one brags about coming from a lowly, like a lower demographic. Well, simultaneously, the higher the higher elites were procreating more. I don't want to say better, successfully.
Let's be honest; they were procreating with themselves.
Yeah, that's true. That's why I'm half retarded.
I don't think they're procreating better. I think it's just it was recorded better.
Yeah,
you stick your name on a stone castle that's lasted however long. I mean,
exactly. It's procreated better. Like they. Yeah, like you said, like it's recorded better.
Yeah,
because if we're gonna think, to be honest, the history of Europe is the history of Catholicism, and Catholics love having big families. Right.
Yeah.
But for the most part, most people are poor, so there's so much better breeding happening amongst the laity than there is at the top in the royals. The royals, they had this odd habit of wanting their progeny to run things, so they bred with other people who had royal heritage, so they have better.
See, that's why I'm
More
half
royal-
retarded. That is.
But there was like if you look at
there's some truth to that, because they didn't breed with a number of children. It was usually within a certain amount of people, because they didn't want to have that.
You didn't want low blood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one, the youngest brother's like, oh, man, there's like 5 kids in front of me. I got to kill them all to become king.
Yeah.
So there was a few of them. Whereas
Oh, yeah.
the peasants,
Yeah.
you had to. They're farmers. They're like, man, let's have 20 kids, and then that way we can really actually have some production here.
Yeah. And when I speak of royalty, it wasn't like English royalty. It was Belgian, so it was nothing special. It wasn't like we run the world. Hey. So I'm just, but it might have been during the you ever talk about the Congo hand trade?
No.
Oh yeah. In the Czech Republic of Congo, in order to get more rubber, Belgium was in charge of the state without actually colonizing it. So they're like, we're running shit. You know how they did in Europe in the
Control the resources.
Yeah, and so they were actually saying you need to bring a certain amount of this rubber in, or we're going to take your hands. Or they would something about hands, or we'd literally cut the hands off people. And I'm worried that might have been part of my lineage. So I'm like, none of that. Because look in the Congo hand trade, it was weird.
Well, okay, maybe to kind of have your back a little bit. I don't think there's any royalty or lineage that has a positive, rosy history behind it. They're all, pretty.
Yeah,
it's all
not
dark.
very friendly.
It's all dark.
The only rosy kind of stuff happening now is now.
We are living in the best time in all of history.
People have commands start with heated leather seats when it's 40 below. I don't know if the Egyptians had that or Inuit. I mean,
there's ways to think about that. You can think about now being the best time in human history to live, and I think maybe from a
white man's point of view, it's very true.
From a cushy position, like everybody's more comfortable.
Oh yeah,
like we all have, I think, maybe a bit more self-determinance and stuff like that. But we also live at a time, and I don't think it has to do with technology or with like how good things are, but we also live in a time where we've let our ideologies astray from beauty, astray from greatness. Like, look at what we're building now. Like, is any of this gonna last?
Oh, I've been thinking about that a lot, actually.
And you go to Europe and look at some of the accomplishments that have stood the test of time, and the art, the skill, the dedication that is put in towards like real legacy. We don't do that. So I mean, we live in the greatest time ever for some things, and then there's other things that our ancestors did better
point out
than we
one
do.
interesting fact about that is that, and I agree with what you said, but I could be wrong, but I think the reason for that, in my perspective, is because the lineage and like what you're talking about, when you have something that outlasts like multiple generations and centuries, decades, is because it was off the backs of other people in perfect, like the conditions were horrible. That's part of the dark history. Whereas now in democracy and the ability to be able to, our civilization, just by default, the fact that you're having to make a profit and then everybody from that point down makes a profit and it's a standard of living. You for that to be possible, like if you were to build a pyramid at scale and break even without being at a loss, I mean, that's something monumental. I mean, even with our technology. But the only way to do it back then was with, it was slavery.
Well, no, but that's the thing. There's argument out there to say that there wasn't actually slavery because the amount of knowledge and skill that it would take to bring it to that scale, to that measurement, is not of a slave knowledge base. It would take a higher, like if have you...
the general labor,
I hate to go to it, but the Dreyfus impact theory, or... what's that Hancock guy? Joe Rogan talks about it all the time.
Hancock?
I'm not sure you were speaking of.
Anyways, Ancient Apocalypse is a great example of that, where it's like, okay, is this actually built in the timeline that we're talking about with slavery, or is it actually built with a different technology, more knowledge, and because of the Dreyfus impact theory, that it just wiped out that knowledge of humanity, or that ability to understand what they did? Like, was it actually with a slave class, or was it actually with a higher technology and higher understanding? We don't actually know.
Okay, well, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, okay, fair enough. I guess we just don't know what we don't know. And so there could have been other means. We're making the assumption that it was with mass human labor to be able to generate that kind of building construction. So, and then it was the elites, the access to that kind of information to be able to have control or oversee.
Just wanting to.
Yeah.
You know, wanting to build something that's going to last for
Who's going to want to build a pyramid? It's for one freaking guy.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
if that's what you think it was for.
Let's get more contemporary. So a couple months ago, I went to Edmonton for a concert. Yeah. Have more.
I gotta have another whiskey. Yeah. Oh, don't you?
Keep
So
going, keep
can I do
going.
that on that recording? We got it. Everyone knows what that is. Right? That little boom part.
Yeah, it's pure sex.
That's international.
Love it.
All right, so I went to a concert in Edmonton here recently, and it was at a venue called the Starlight Room, and that venue is the old Salvation Army. You know, in downtown, brick building. It's been there. It was designed by the same guy that did the McDonald Hotel. So it's been there for 100 years and is still just the coolest building on the block. And everything else around it that's relatively contemporary just seems so utilitarian and cold, and like you look at schools and stuff like that. Like, what is the environment that you're learning in? Like, if you go to one of the new ones like Ma Murray and Fort St. John, you've got postmodern bullshit, and you go to they call the rooms a suite. Yeah, sure. And then you go to one of the older schools, and it's like my brother Justin. He says, like, I want like that communist kind of learning. Where it's like everybody's in a row and you have like those like really like bad lights that give you a headache, and you look at the front and there's a ruler, and
effective, you mean?
There's ceiling tiles, like that's the ceiling. It's like those like tiles that have brown spots in them. So I mean that's the level of utilitarianism that we build everything to. It's to a postmodern ideal that deconstructs everything, or it's strictly utilitarian and this just gets a job done. There's got to be a place in the middle for lasting beauty. And we've had it, as much as 80 to 100 years ago. That building is still there. It's still useful. There's still community happening in that old Sally Ann building. And it's not going away anytime soon. That building's not falling down. Even though there's concerts in there, people jumping up and down and mosh pitting above a bar. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah. I'll say one thing is that the historical, I guess, architecture is amazing. Even some of the more modern stuff. I mean, Google on like the TV or whatever, they go through those little different slide of photos.
Yeah.
And one of the ones I even seen earlier today was of like a whole stone, like a castle and like a city and everything, and it was on an island in the middle of the ocean, and it's hitting with all these weather patterns and everything we're dealing with now, and yet it still looks pretty good. So that resiliency and construction and everything, the longevity of it all is definitely, I think, what you're saying. When you're in there, there's a feeling that goes with it.
Yeah, there's a physical longevity, and there's also a concept. The medium is also the message. So if you're like, let's say, just dress all in black all the time, you are going to send a message to everybody that you're dark, maybe even to yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
for sure. 100%.
If you're going to design buildings that are made with postmodern ideals, it's going to teach people to deconstruct tradition, to deconstruct society, to deconstruct themselves, sexuality, et cetera, right? Like there is a message that's sent by your environment to you, and that affects how you think.
I agree. And I think there's more that a guy could even contribute to what your point is, because I think some of what you're explaining goes a little deeper with the environment, but then the grind. What is the environment you're in? Is it optimum? Probably not, because to create that kind of creativity and then passion application and everything that goes into it, you need to have sorrow. You need to have something to fight against. You need to be able
suffering.
to grit. Yeah, you need a certain amount of suffering, because without that, you have no foundation to be able to develop and grow from it. And instead of it being a crutch, it's something that you're able to put into something that is a point of self-identity instead of referring it to as work. You're putting your lineage into it. That's why art seems to be so long-lasting, is because that person who did it is everyone refers to their last name with pride. Well, and that's what that person, he wanted to make sure that his kids had pride, and his workmanship and everything was a representation of him. And I think that comes from a lot of, I think, living standards that we nowadays would not really put up with from a day to day. We're more concerned with, I think, the short term. And that's why we don't put as much into things as we do. I mean,
we've displaced beauty, right? We've expected beauty everywhere else. It's like, well, I don't need it in my living standard because I have it on my TV. You can have like these just really plain Jane places because I don't need to be artistic in the way I express myself, because I can find that artistic release somewhere else. But it's so fleeting and temporary. We don't have beautiful buildings anymore because we don't. Why do we need them? Well, maybe it'd be a good thing. It's like, yeah, but we have it over here. And so we don't have that same level. I grew up around Quebec and Quebec City and stuff like that. So you get to see some of these really old, beautiful old buildings that just have so much. They're very intentional with their craftsmanship. And we don't have that here because we see everything as temporary, and we can still view that stuff there. But we have nothing of it here because no one's willing to put forth the cost. Beauty costs money. And it's just like, okay, well, I don't get my return on investment for beauty. Or for architectural beauty anyways.
Yeah.
And
that's what I meant though earlier.
Yeah.
That's why it deteriorates. We're not willing to put that cost and that investment into something that's actually going to last.
Mm-hmm. And that can translate. So if everything you do in life is building towards something that is going to fall away within 25 years, and you know that, like, what kind of message does that send to your psyche about what kind of values to hold for yourself, what kind of values to instill in your children, what kind of values to bring elsewhere, right? Because it's like, you can say, like, it doesn't really matter anyway. Like this thing that we built is going to be gone in a little while, or it's going to be run down, or that, when's the last time that, it's like one of the things that you could do when building, like something like the McDonald Hotel or some of the big churches in Eastern Canada, or, any one of those things, you need bricklayers. You need people who are not just tradesmen, but artificers, like, who are going to pass that down to their kids, right? Like, this brick here, bam, you put it in like that. We're doing it like that so that it's strong, so that it's going to last. Like, you're soaked in an idea of resilience, as well as beauty, because we want to make it that angle, cut it this way so that it's perfect, so that it lines up with that one.
Part of it is work ethic.
Yeah, work.
The craft, work ethic. I mean, everybody had pride in what they're doing. Because, I mean, let's face it, what we do for work or anything that provides at all is a sense of identity. Man or female, it's a sense of identity.
Yeah.
Because the first question when you meet somebody is, what's your name? And then the next one followed up is, what do you do? And then all of a sudden, boom, and that's, it's the identity. And that's why a lot of people have a hard time when they lose their job, because it's.
Oh yeah. Because it's all encompassing. It's what they are.
And it's not something you can just bring somewhere else. Like,
because
exactly.
I can go anywhere in Canada and make money because I know a trade.
But when you deteriorate that, then, like what you were saying,
well, that's why
the next guy's like, well, to hell with this. I'm going down the street for $1 later, or buck later, whiskey, $1 more. Right? Yeah. There's no sense of pride or identity in any of it. It's all about the moment in the now. Do you think a $2 an hour difference in pay is going to change their standard of living or make a payment on anything?
I suppose that depends exactly on how much you're making. For somebody, $2 an hour might be a godsend.
Have you met anybody that has made that decision
of my age bracket?
No. God. Yeah. No. So, I mean, that's...
Yeah.
that's not.
Well, simultaneously,
All right.
I gotta push on that one a little bit.
$2 here, $2 somewhere else is a huge difference.
Yeah, in another country.
But again,
well, okay, so
you
that's
kick back to
different, but
here.
that's not. You can't take, I think, an example like that and say, well, $2 in Canada and Fort St. John's going to make a world of difference down in the Philippines. I mean, okay, we're trying to,
Well, perfect example is the Philippines. We got a lot of people up in Fort St. John. My cousin married a Filipino girl, and they send not a whole lot of money there, but they do send money back home. And when he goes on vacation, he goes to the Philippines. He lives like a fucking king. Like he does.
Look at the difference in work ethic, though.
Yeah.
And he doesn't turn his nose up to a lot of different stuff.
No, and that's the thing. And like these people, like they work harder than a lot of people, but I feel like the downside is we talk past each other in a little bit of this, because when I say a Filipino worker works harder, well, their wage is technically being subsidized by the government. So let's say hypothetically they can work a minimum wage job. Well, they're getting paid to work at Tim Hortons, which is not God bless them. I could never do it because I fucking hate people.
No, disclaimer.
Just put it out there. Well, simultaneously, the government is paying half their wage. So if they say, oh, well, Tim Hortons is paying them 15 and then the government's paying 15, now they're making $30 an hour to work at Tim Hortons, which is, that's good. That's
$30 an hour is...
That's really good for an entry-level job. And they're able to send that money, and it does good on a global scale. So I'm not ripping on it the way that people want me to, because I'm not a xenophobe in any way, where I think, hey, if they have an opportunity, take advantage of the opportunity you've been given. Yeah. Did they earn it on their own accord? I don't know. I don't think so.
I think so. To the other part of having to, so let's say, like, put yourself in their shoes. Like, they're here doing that and grateful for it, whether or not the government's subsidizing it, because that the difference and expectations and standard of living and everything else, they're only sending that money away because there's a sense of obligation.
Yeah,
to be
there's
able
a
to
sense
help.
of family, of community.
If there was no need for that little bit of money that they sent them, let's say their relatives were very well off and wealthy, do you think what they're putting into the pot, in their homeland is going to make any difference and would make them want to actually do that?
The reason I say that it's a bit of a handout is the fact that would they do the same job for the actual wage that they would be paid for that job in their own country? Like if they were getting paid $15 an hour without the government subsidy, would they be doing that job?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not, again, not disparaging.
No, I'm
take advantage.
So, okay, I understand what you're saying way better now. Okay.
So again, appreciate them.
Yeah.
I appreciate what Tim Hortons is doing.
100%.
Don't take away my double-double.
100%. I want to try and actually come back on that, but that's a good point that you make.
And again, I love the people.
Yeah.
Hardest working people. They're doing. And I know not everyone who works at Tim Hortons is a Filipino.
No.
I mean, that being said, right? Like if I could find a gig that was subsidized in a way that made more sense for me to do, I'd do it.
Yeah, that's why I'm not ripping on them.
You got to take the opportunities.
Basically,
you get.
Mike, I think what you're saying is if I was to go do my job in another country, and the difference in pay structure would be like $3,000 a day, or let's say $400 a day, or whatever way more than I am now for this.
You'd be a fool not to.
Yeah, and the opportunity. But that was, I think, the intentions and reason why they made that move and sacrifice to come to the country to be able to have that opportunity. Yeah. Now, the work and the job scope that they're doing, is that above or below them if it was within their own country? So that's, I think, what you're going at. Yeah. Okay, so that's a good point to make. I think when it comes to something like that, I would have to say,
sorry.
Can we come back to that?
We can totally.
That's a good question. And I want to respond to it. It's so bad.
Really?
He does that to me so much.
No, it's a good point. I like it.
Whiskey. And that's the thing. We have these questions that we have on our podcast, and they're not meant to put a negative or positive response. They're just questions that we want to ask where we feel like they should be.
I hate that when it's always, like the default is, know. Typically, it's bullshit. wide range analogy.
Yeah.
You're racist. You're this.
No.
And it's like, okay,
No.
wait a minute. You're
If
using
anyone-
very strong description and terminology for something that
For
might
something
not
that's
be
complicated
Come
and nuanced.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
And the idea of
the
being called
temperature
a,
has to come down.
and the idea of being called a racist, like it genuinely hurts my feelings, and I've been called that by very good friends, and it sucks. And a real racist don't give a fuck. I do. I
Yeah,
very
that's
much.
true, yeah.
And so when you say something like that, realize your words do mean something, and don't. If you're gonna throw that word around, you better fucking mean it.
The reason I think people use it is because they actually know that words do mean something. They know there is power in words. They
It
do
doesn't
know that.
mean anything to those people.
But however, they know that you feel it, right? Because
Exactly.
when you start
Yeah.
throwing around words like that as pejoratives, it gets
Whoa,
to
pejoratives. Devon. Okay, you're on
told
fire,
you,
my
man.
friend. Have another whiskey. We gotta
Gotta dumb me down a little
bit.
bit here. All right, fine. Okay.
Just a sip, eh? Splash.
Just a splash. But yeah, when you start using those words, knowing that you're using it as a weapon, because you believe words are weapons, right?
Yep.
Because that is a. It's not something that I particularly believe in. However, I guess the more woke ideology sort of thing, like that's the mantra. Words is violence, right?
Yeah.
So that cuts two ways, and they know that. So they will use that word, even though it doesn't technically apply to you, in order to hurt you or to make you think less of yourself or to score points on their side of it. It's like it's just pandering.
Yeah.
But when you use words enough in contexts outside of what they're meant for, you begin to change the meaning.
That's right.
Because when people say you're a racist now, they don't mean that you are a person that values people for them as individuals, regardless of race, color, or creed. They mean, no, you're born a certain way, and that gives you advantage over other people. So no matter what you say or think, you don't understand them, and you can't speak for them because they are suffering, and your ability to say I'm not a racist is an example of your racism, of your privilege or something like that, right? So it's not technically racism, but they're changing the narrative so that racism means power.
Yeah.
It's
No,
a
it is a
dynamic
power
or things
grab.
like that. It's
That's
brutal.
all it ever is. When you talk to somebody and they have such a strong opinion about something, and this grinds me in a way that I have a hard time controlling. But when someone comes back with a broad analogy or term that really has no specific meaning, like a foundation of where it's coming from, like maybe racist or politicians, let's throw them under the bus a little bit.
Deal.
No one in
Let's do it.
particular. But they have broad terminology. They've turned it into an art form.
Yeah.
And then you ask them on something, and they give you, let me be clear, and then it's followed up with a bunch
Just
of bullshit.
mud. Just fucking mud. They're like,
Because-
let me clear as mud.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever
but
read?
if you ask them, if you ask them certain things, they skirt it with general replies, because to be able to break it down into a position of where of understanding where they're trying to come from, of understanding with the other person being able to say, okay, I know where you're coming from, and then reply in a manner like what our discussion is here, where you're saying, okay, this is the reasoning why I might disagree. Or
Well, yeah, because you could push back. You could dial down on Mike.
It makes
and be
them-
like,
yeah.
okay, so, and then you understood where he was coming from, because you could ask follow up questions. You could sneak behind the statements in order to find the real
Exactly.
intention, understand, and then realize how he's using his words. Right?
Exactly. So that's growth. When you use something with broad terminology under the umbrella of moral justice or superiority, all you're trying to do is it's a power grab.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It doesn't make you any better. It actually kind of makes you stupid, because you can't explain
Yeah.
why in an articulate way why you think the way you are and are thinking. And the one thing that I've learned that the podcast has allowed people to do is it doesn't make you smarter. It just allows you to be able to categorize why you think the way you do. And then when you're thinking about something, instead of it being a revolving door all the time and you're starting and ending in the same place, when you articulate it, it categorizes it and gives you more of an understanding of what you're trying to express. people who are just broad terminology
Oh.
is just trying to shut you up because they feel a certain way
It's a
and they just
certain
want to
level
prove
of-
a point and be like,
it's
ha, I just won that.
It's intellectual laziness is what it is. It's like, oh, look at me. And then
It
they'll just be
is.
lazy with the way that they...
100%.
Have you ever read the book, The Screw Tape Letters?
No.
Okay,
Wish I
so-
did though.
You should. I highly
Screw tape letters?
The Screw Tape
Yes,
Letters.
C.S. Lewis.
I highly recommend it. So it's a book written by a professor named C.S. Lewis, who was a professor, a World War I vet, and later became a Christian and an apologist. Very, very smart man on his own right, before he converted. So once he converted, he began writing stories that included his thoughts and his examinations of reality. And one of them was called The Screw Tape Letters. The premise behind the book is there is a hierarchy of demons. A bureaucracy of demons, because that's how he interpreted hell, as a bureaucracy.
Which sounds accurate.
Sounds on point to me. And so the book is a series of letters between the demon in charge of a lower demon who was in charge of dementing a young man. And so you're hearing the higher demon's advice throughout the whole thing. And in the first chapter, his first thing that he instructed his younger demon to do to this young man is to get him wrapped up in jargon. It's like that is the easiest way to control him and keep him where you want him, is by getting him wrapped up in using terms without caring what those words mean.
Yeah.
And
Full
so-
understanding.
Yeah, without full understanding, or without using them without desire for conversation. It's a means to shut down anything that may, as the demon basically said it, it's use jargon as a means to shut down any useful conversation the enemy, meaning God or heaven, may have against us. So jargon itself, in C.S. Lewis's conception of reality, is a demonic tool to keep people isolated from one another and to keep people isolated from truth.
Fair enough. I think there's definitely some overlap in our current culture with that.
Oh yeah, huge.
100%.
I just got to put out there for anyone that's listening. If you are disregarding what Devon is saying simply because of the idea of demons and stuff like that, it's on the same vein as George Orwell's 1984 or Animal Farm and stuff like that. It may be speaking of something in a way that maybe...
Okay, yeah, sure. Let's get into that. So I said the word demon.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna just put a little bit of a precursor here.
Yeah.
So this is coming up to 2 hours.
Okay.
So what we can do, I'm going to give
Wow.
you two options, and this is for the sake of me and the listener.
Yeah.
Because of the video aspect and the
Yeah.
commitment to this is, I want to keep this going, but there's three elements I got to address. One is we could do this in a part one and a part two. Second is where this is going is getting into really good conversation, but it's mixed, with some whiskey, and I want to get into religion, but now or later we can can decide. And two, I gotta take a freaking leak like you've never had before. So we could do a pause, and I can cut this out, and we can say, "Hey, this was awesome. I'm glad you guys are coming," or we can continue on. It's your call, because I'm really cool either way.
I'll leave it to dealer's choice.
Yeah. Do you want to do a part two, like have us back again? This
would be split into part two. I've done 4-hour episodes, and the only feedback I have on those is good, but I didn't make it to the end. And but if you split it into two, it's like binge watching. Like they'll watch 5 hours of.
I got a second choice, like a I don't know what I call the third choice, but
What's that?
they check out BCP in 2 weeks when you come on there.
Well, you could do that too, for sure.
Yeah, kind of push them that direction. I hate to be a whore like that.
Trying to self-promote.
Yeah,
It's all good. Plug your own. Hey, okay. Well, sounds like we're wrapping it up then.
Yeah,
So
I got to piss too. You're not the only
where do we find
BCP everywhere.
BCP?
Blue Collar Philosophers Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook, and on anywhere that you get your podcasts, we are there.
Yeah. Most often people find it through iTunes or Spotify.
And this is audio only?
So
Yes,
we have
it is
YouTube,
audio
but
only.
it is no visual effects. It is simply our background picture and just audio. So until we get to the point of picking up proper sponsors, I'm not taking food out of my kids' mouths more than I have to. So fuck anyone who wants me to put my kids out so they can have a visual.
That was a very strong opinion. How do you feel, Devon, about that?
Less strong, but in more or less in agreement.
So, spot any major platform.
Any major platform. Yep.
And you're from Fort St. John, doing it a year and a half. You got just about 100 episodes rocking solid. You guys started out with just the two of you. You're branching out into some guests. You've had quite a few repeat guests, and you're getting into bigger, better. So check you out. And
Yeah.
I love it. I think I'm glad you guys came out. You know, this is a long time.
It was
coming.
a long time coming. I was so stoked when I found out we were coming to do this today.
Haha, I'm stoked that you're stoked.
So stoked, eh?
Okay, guys. Well, take care. This is 2 hours, and I do want to continue this on. So hopefully it's not
So if
too
you
long
want to,
from
if
now.
you want to hear Kickstand's opinion on the epistemology of demons, then
Yeah, I kind of cut you off there, didn't I?
Big fucking word, epistemology.
it's probably a good spot to stop. And
Okay.
it gives us somewhere to go when we reconnect.
Sounds good.
All right, God
Take
bless
care,
you.
guys. Wave to the camera. Say bye.
Bye.
Yeah.